Hi, everybody. As you know already, my name is Kathy Wolper, and I own a company called Kitchen Wizards. I've been in business for 19 years now, and my background is in teaching and training, but I always had a passion for cooking and baking. So 19 years ago, I started a home-based baking business and then started teaching cooking and baking programs to children and adults. And come March, I had 25 instructors on board, and all of a sudden we were unable to teach any programs live because of the quarantine. So I started to offer virtual programs, and Kathy left a message. Um, Kathy, can you hear me now? If you could chat your answer, Kathy Vetkin. Sorry, everybody, there's some technical difficulties I'm trying to clear up. Okay. Yeah, Kathy, maybe log in and out again and see if it's different. Is anybody else, if anybody else is having trouble hearing me, if you could answer in the chat box, if you're having trouble with my audio. The chat box is at the bottom of the screen. It's a little cartoon bubble. So if you could just answer there, if you're having trouble. I know one person is, and her name is also Kathy. I'm not talking to myself. So, okay, it looks like other people are okay. So that's great. Okay, thanks. So post-quarantine, I'm doing all virtual programs to keep everybody safe. Our programs in person are all group classes where we share the food. So this is much easier to do the virtual programs and keep everybody safe from germs, which are particularly bad in the fall. So I'm happy to be here today to teach you a little bit about the Instant Pot. And I also have another camera that's a close-up camera that will show what's in the pot as we actually start to cook. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Instant Pot. First of all, it's my new favorite kitchen appliance or kitchen gadget. The first one that I discovered many years ago is a garlic press. I recommend if anybody doesn't have a garlic press, that's a good one to get. I also love the microplane grater because you don't get skin knuckles from grating cheese. And I love the immersion blender, which we're also going to be using today to blend our soup when it's finished. And the Instant Pot. So today we're focusing on the pressure cooker and saute settings on the Instant Pot. And I'm going to tell you a few things about it, general ideas about it. And then we can also, Kathy Avadkian, I think it is just you, I'm sorry, that is having trouble with audio. So the Instant Pot is a pressure cooker, and the pressure cooker and saute setting we're going to be working on, but it has many other settings. So you can make soups and stews. The things that I like the best to make are pasta, one pot pasta dishes, soups and stews. Beef stew is awesome in the Instant Pot. You can make pulled, for barbecue, pulled pork, pulled chicken. That works very well, even from frozen, as long as it's boneless and doesn't have the sack inside the whole chicken. It also is great for, believe it or not, cheesecake. Cheesecake is amazing when made in the Instant Pot. And the last thing that I like to do in it is the hard-boiled eggs. The steam from cooking in a pressure cooker, pressure cookers keep the steam inside, so cheesecakes don't get the crack across the top that you normally have when you put a cheesecake in the oven. A lot of times you'll get a crack across the top. And eggs, the shell comes right off. It releases very easily. So are you putting the recipe up step by step?
Yeah, it's just the recipe. Keep going.
Oh, okay.
Don't pay any attention to us. You just do your thing. We're good.
Okay. I thought it was some questions that were coming up. So anyway, the things I like about the Instant Pot are it's one pot cooking. So because it has a saute setting, you can saute in the same pot that you then cook. It cooks much more quickly, although people are surprised when they first use the Instant Pot because it has to come up to pressure. So it has to contain all that pressure before it starts to cook. So if something is supposed to cook for 4 minutes, it's not actually 4 minutes time that you need to allow because it takes about 15 minutes for it to come up to pressure. Also, it contains all of the nutrients, so it's a much healthier way to cook. And it's there are resources for cooking with the Instant Pot. If you are in the middle of something and you have an Instant Pot emergency and you're not sure what to do, there's Facebook pages for Instant Pot cooking, and there are people that are crazy about using their Instant Pot all over the world, and they're there to answer questions. People like you and me that are there, they'll go on and see if somebody has a question. I've seen people say, I have a beef roast. What can I do with it for a recipe tonight? And people will answer. I've seen other people say, the steam keeps coming out even though I have the valve closed. What's the problem? So there's people that are just normal average cooks who love using the Instant Pot. I once taught an in-person class, and there was a woman in the class who said, I use the Instant Pot for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day of the week. I thought that was a bit extreme, but I also thought she should have been teaching the class, not me. It was kind of funny that she used it so often. But you don't heat up the whole kitchen with it because you're cooking in the pot. Now, the one thing, a lot of people have gotten Instant Pots as gifts or bought them on sale and never used them. They're still in the box. I have people in my in-person classes who tell me, I got it for Christmas a year ago and I never used it because it scares me. And that's the common thing that I hear. Now, you can use the Instant Pot as a slow cooker, so you can get rid of your crock pot that way. I know some of the more recent models have the air fryer built into it, so it's all one appliance, and that's great. You can make yogurt. You can sterilize, so if you're jarring or canning things, you can use it for that. Again, we're using it just with the pressure cooker setting, but we're going to saute some of the vegetables first. So I'm going to take a minute just to see if there's any questions about what I've said so far. There are protections built into the Instant Pots that are the electric ones you can buy nowadays that prevent it from exploding. I know when I was a kid, my mom had a stovetop pressure cooker. And it was one of those deals, and if you're of a certain age and you were a kid when I was a kid, you probably remember that it was like, kids, get out of the house. I'm going to open the pressure cooker because it was such a scary thing. And that's kind of ingrained in some people's brains, but the Instant Pot lid won't come off if the pressure hasn't been released. So we'll get to that later in the class, but you know, I hope that puts your mind at ease. So let me see if there's any questions here that I can answer. Yes, you can, Rachel. You can use it as a pressure cooker to can. Okay, it looks like that's the only additional question I see there. So I'll check back every so often. Now, first we're going to use the saute setting. I want to get the soup on because not everybody attending this program has an Instant Pot. If you do, after you saute the vegetables like you would on the stovetop, then you put the lid on and you cook it for 10 minutes at high pressure. That's how you do it. The recipe you're going to get is not an Instant Pot recipe though, so you'll be able to cook it on the stovetop. But if you have an Instant Pot and want to cook it in the Instant Pot, then just jot down that it's going to be 10 minutes at high pressure. Okay, so once we get it on, I'm going to show you the front of the pot so that you can see some of the settings. Every model of every brand is different, but they all have some things in common. So the terminology is something you need to get used to. So another thing is, if you heat the broth, you have to have more liquid in, clear type liquids, translucent, not gravies. You need to have something that would create steam like broth or water. I'm using chicken broth. You can use vegetarian. You can also use water for it. But if you heat that up while you're sauteing, that cuts down on the amount of time that it will take for the pot to heat up to come to pressure. So I'm going to put that on, and then I'm going to change the camera over so that you can see close up. Sorry, let me spotlight here. Okay, so here I have the Instant Pot set up, and I just put some butter in. And I'm going to put it on the saute setting and start it. So the butter is going to melt. Let's see if I can move this over. Yeah, so you can see it better. So while we're waiting for the butter to melt, I'll show you a little bit about the Instant Pot. There's a rubber insert that is the sealing ring. And sometimes people have trouble with the sealing ring because if it's not in place, then it won't seal the lid and the steam will come out. You can pull that out though and wash the sealing ring. There's also a valve, and that tells you whether you can open the lid or not. If you try and it's not in the right position, it's not going to let you open the valve. And there's also the steam release, the vent release, and that's right here. So it will not allow you to saute with the lid on. The saute is supposed to be something you're watching out for. So we have the butter melting, and I'm going to add already chopped celery, carrots, and onion, and saute that. While we're waiting for that to saute, I want to explain something to you. Butternut squash is very difficult to peel when it's raw. It's also very difficult to cut it when it's raw. It's very hard, like a rock. So what I did earlier was I took the whole butternut squash and I put it in with a cup of water into my Instant Pot, and I cooked it for 10 minutes. It was enough for it to soften it so that it was really easy to get the skin off, and that's what it looks like. So I have it all chopped up. Now, I chopped everything pretty small, but you really don't even have to because it cooks so quickly. And then I'm going to use my immersion blender to blend it after the class. And you can blend that to puree it. You can also add cream or almond milk or cashew milk or coconut milk to it to make it a creamier consistency, although I think it's just fine the way it is. And you can also put sour cream in if you want a tangier flavor. So there's a lot of things you can do differently. You can garnish it with bacon on the top or croutons or a sage leaf on each bowl. So I have this cooking, and it's just like you would do on the stovetop, but after, you're only going to have this pot to wash. The pot, the insert comes out, so that's the only thing you have to wash. And it goes in the dishwasher. It's a beautiful thing. Looks like we have a couple questions, so while I'm waiting for that, I'll see what questions you have. Karen, the butternut squash, you do the same thing on the stovetop. It just cooks longer. And when you see the recipe will tell you how long to cook it on the stovetop. It does not tell you how long to cook it in the Instant Pot. That's going to be 10 minutes once we saute it and put the lid on. 10 minutes once it comes up to pressure. So we have this just about finished. We have about 1 more minute. A crock pot, yes, Peg, you can. Again, that would take longer. Rachel, I haven't tried it in the microwave. Do you have any tips for everybody on that? I'd love to hear it. I'll read it if you put it. Cooking it in the microwave. Sherry, you can cook it in the oven. You'd have to crack it in half and then scrape out the seeds, and then you can put it in the oven and roast it. Or you could just peel it, which might be challenging, and then chop it up and put it in raw. It does not have to be cooked before you put it in the Instant Pot. I just do that to make peeling it easier. So we have our vegetables sauteed. I'm going to add the butternut squash. I'm going to add apple that I have peeled. And I'm going to add my warmed up broth. And again, you don't have to warm the broth ahead of time. And it also requires a cup of water. So let me get that. I can't wait for dinner tonight. I love this soup. So now I have it all stirred. And then I'll use the immersion blender afterwards to puree. Now you hear the little jingle? That lets you know the lid's on correctly, but it's beeping at me because I have it set for saute. So I'm going to shut off the Instant Pot and change it to soup or broth setting and adjust the lid. It just let me know that the lid is set. And now I'm going to change it to 10 minutes. And high pressure, and I'm going to start it. So now I'm going to take the camera off so that I can come around to the front and show you the pot. One thing that happens a lot is the plug comes unplugged from the back, and people say all of a sudden it's not working. It just shut off. They think that something went wrong, but it didn't. Now, this is my favorite. I have 3 Instant Pots because when I do live classes, I need to do different recipes. This is my favorite. If you can see, it has different settings that automatically have the amount of time. So let's see if I can angle this correctly. Okay, so it's on super broth, and I adjusted the time for 10 minutes. It also has pressure cook, which is generic. It has meats and stews. It has beans and chili, steam, slow cook, saute, and warm. On this side, it has rice, porridge, multigrain, cake, egg, sterilize, and yogurt. And you can see that it's very self-explanatory. It tells you that it's on, tells you that it's high pressure, and it tells you that it's keep warm at the end. The thing I like best about this particular model, though, is that it shows you on this little graph when it's preheating, and then it'll go up on a little hill and say cooking, and then keep warm at the end. So I'll try to come back later to show you that, but I'm going to switch this to spotlight myself while I get this camera set back up for looking in the pot after it's cooked. You need to make sure that the valve, that you don't have the steam released while it's cooking, because if the steam's coming out, it's not containing it and it'll never come up to pressure and start in the cooking setting. So I have a couple more questions here. So let's see. I've made rice, Jennifer, I've made rice several times in the Instant Pot. I don't have a rice cooker, but I can tell you that it doesn't clump together. It's really quick and easy to make it. Not sure how it's different from a rice cooker, though, to be honest with you. Okay, there were some questions about not cooking the squash in the Instant Pot. So Rachel, thank you for checking that. She found out how to do it in the microwave. And it's in the comments, in the chat comments, if everybody wants to take a look at that, if you're interested. And remember, you don't have to cook it all the way through just to soften the skin. So it looks like that 3 to 5 minutes is enough just to soften the skin, which makes it easier to cut. Okay, that looks great. Thanks, Rachel. Okay. What other questions can I answer for you while we're cooking? I'm going to change it to gallery view so I can see you. And what time is dinner, Peg? Do you know my address? I promised some to my dad tomorrow. I'll be seeing my dad at his assisted living, so I promised some to him. So I don't know that I have too much to share, but please ask questions if you have questions about it. Barbara, I know you can cook brown rice, but I've only cooked white rice. But I would recommend, the one thing that I've noticed is if you Google for a recipe, Instant Pot brown rice, for example, you can find out recipes. Now, I'll tell you, I have my mom's beef stew recipe that is phenomenal. It always was phenomenal. And I thought I should try it in the Instant Pot because, you know, they say all these meats are so good, so tender in the Instant Pot. We'll just see. Well, I've never tasted a better beef stew. Sorry, Mom, but I cooked it in the Instant Pot. Now, I didn't know how long to cook it because obviously my mother didn't cook it in a pressure cooker. She cooked it on the stovetop like most people do, and she didn't have an Instant Pot. So what I did was I Googled Instant Pot beef stew. I wanted to use my mom's recipe. I knew that I had to add a certain amount of broth to create the steam vacuum. So I checked the recipes for the amount of time and also for how much liquid to add. And if you check one recipe at the top of the Google results, it's not enough because we all know there's all kinds of fake news on the internet. So you want to check at least 3 different recipes. And when you check 3 recipes, you kind of get a consensus. Everybody agrees 3 cups of liquid, for example. Everybody agrees 30 minutes in the Instant Pot. So it gives you a better feel for how long it's going to be, but you can still use your own recipe. So that's really a cool thing to do. The Instant Pot, this one is a 6-quart, but they have larger ones, Sherry. Francine, you can buy the butternut squash that is already cut up and in containers. That's a great time saver. I agree. Do I have a recipe book, like a cookbook, Susan, from Facebook Live? No, I don't. But you can get a copy of the recipe, this recipe. Something maybe to put on my list. Maybe I should have done that during the quarantine, created a cookbook. So, but I'm happy to give out recipes. On the copy of the recipe that will be posted, I think, Peg, on the website. Yeah, there's a copy of the recipe. It has my email address. If you want to ask questions after the fact, I'm happy to take your questions. Okay. So right now, I can't open the Instant Pot. It's cooking. It would be more entertainment than you expected to get if I could open the Instant Pot at this point, because the steam would probably burn me, but I can't. So I'm not faking that I'm trying to open it. I'm really trying to open it, and it's not budging. So it's very quiet because the steam is contained. And I'm going to switch the camera view again so that I can show you what it looks like on the top. Let's see. Okay, so hopefully you can see this. See that little silver button? That comes up when it's sealed and cooking and the steam is contained. Once the steam is released, then it goes back down flush with the black lid. And it still says preheating. That glare is not good, is it? Okay, there we go. It still says preheating, but do you see how the line is going up? And pretty soon it'll be the bump in the middle where it's actually doing the cooking. The other thing is, this is the steam release right here. So that's what you turn. You'll see on recipes different things. It'll say timed release or instant release. You'll see different terminology. So let's see. People have asked me, well, how do you know if you should let it release on its own or if you should release it right away. I go by the recipe. I'm not an expert on the mechanics of it and why, except I do know that if it says, say, cook for 10 minutes and let the steam release for 5 minutes, then it's still, as it's keeping warm but cooling down, it's still continuing to cook. So you need to follow the recipe that way. If it says you can do it instantly, then you can do it instantly. Okay, so let's see, we have more questions. And I know we ran over time and you haven't gotten to see it, but let's see. The recipe will be on the gnionline.com website. Okay. So that's a down and dirty, quick, how to use the Instant Pot pressure cooker setting and saute setting. It just beeped to let me know that it went to the cooking phase, but we still have 10 minutes of cooking and then 5 minutes for it to do a natural release. That's the other. Natural release is when you let it go. The nice thing about it is when you have it on the keep warm setting, say you get a phone call in the other room and you forget that you have it on, it's going to keep warm for you, so you don't have to worry about it. So you can just let it go. You could go out to the store, although if you're a fan of This Is Us, the TV show, and you saw the fire from the crock pot, you probably don't want to leave the house when it's on. But if you live dangerously and you want to try that, that's fine. You can try, you can leave, and when you come back, it'll be cooked. It'll have been in the keep warm setting, and your dinner will be ready. Does anybody have any comments about how you have used your Instant Pot, if you have? Anybody? Deb, I think you have, haven't you? In the chat box, you can remind me, was it a barbecue? No, it was a pasta, right? Oh, Karen, thank you. I'm glad. My double oven, I like it. I used to sell 15,000 cookies every Christmas for the baking part of my business that doesn't exist anymore. And the double oven was quite a savior. So, Andrea, you make pulled chicken all the time and rice. And Andrea, do you make brown rice? Chicken stew also, that's good. The one trick that I have, the hack that I have for you about pulled meat is after you cook it in the Instant Pot, if you have a big stand mixer like I have over in the corner there, you can put it in there with the, if you have a KitchenAid, you can use the big beater, the K-shaped beater, and shred it that way rather than use the 2 forks, which takes a while, or using your hands. You can just put chunks of the cooked chicken or pork into the mixer, the stand mixer. Okay. And Andrea, did you say if you make brown rice? You do make brown rice? Pasta turns out mushy. Susan, I'm not sure. There's a lot of things that could be variables. Do you put in the amount of liquid that it says to put in? And do you stir the pasta into the liquid? I have some pasta recipes for the Instant Pot, and it says to put the tomato paste on the top. Don't stir it through because it can burn on the bottom because it's not a clear enough liquid. So it won't create steam. So if you have that on the bottom, it can burn onto the bottom. But I haven't heard about pasta being too mushy. I'm thinking maybe cooking it too long, because that happens when you cook on the stovetop in boiling water. If you cook it too long, it's mushier. Are you are using a recipe, it says here, Susan. So I'm not quite sure. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm in the chat box. So chicken and broccoli dish, very good and easy. Okay, thanks, Deb. Okay, so let me change. I don't know if I can. My phone shut off. So I'm going to turn this so that you can see, because there's one last thing I wanted to show you about this. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but that bump is in the middle of the cooking phase, and it shows 5 minutes. That's the other nice thing about it. It counts down. So I started at 10 minutes and it counts down to 0. And then when it's in the keep warm setting, it starts counting up again. So you can see that it counted down and it did the cooking. And then it tells you, if a recipe says to have it in the keep warm natural release setting for 5 minutes, you let it count up to 5. And if you miss it and it's longer, that's okay. And then you can change the knob so that you're releasing the remainder of the steam, because if it's only 5 minutes, there's still steam in there. Okay. Anyone else? Sherry, I would imagine you'd have to have a monster Instant Pot for your crew. A lot of guys, big eaters, right? Okay. Frankie on Facebook. Mac and cheese and stroganoff. They're 2 good dishes. First thing I ever made was mac and cheese, and it was only 4 minutes of cooking time. And by the way, with pasta dishes, you put dry pasta in. You don't boil the pasta first and add it. You put dry pasta in with the broth and the sauteed meat, if it's a meat sauce, and the tomato puree, or whatever it is that you're adding to it. 12 quart, yes, Sherry, I think you probably would. And okay. So Frankie on Facebook, that's great. The mac and cheese is really good. But that's the one that I think, the recipe that has the biggest wow factor, a pasta recipe. Because whether you're adding penne or macaroni or regular pasta noodles, you just put it in dry. And I would not use fresh pasta for that, because that probably would get a little softer. Okay. Okay, well, great. I'm sorry I can't show you the finished product. Maybe, not sure if I can record that, Peg, and have that on Facebook and on your website after the fact. If that's a possibility, you can get to me after the session is over, and I'll do that and send it on to you. You're welcome, Karen. Thanks for coming. Okay, anybody else? Last minute questions? You're welcome, Karen. Thank you. Great, Rachel. Thank you for your help with the microwave instructions. The mixer. Your question is about the immersion blender, Sherry? Okay, I like it because it keeps everything in the one pot. You just put it right in and you blend it, and you only use that. The other reason I like it is if you use a blender, a regular blender that you would make a smoothie in, then there's a chance that the lid will pop off because of the steam from how hot it is. So it's just safer for me because I can be a disaster in the kitchen. Okay, Andrea, thank you for coming. Let me see here. Okay. Anne, thank you. Andrea, good to have you here. Sherry, Sherry, the soup is as chunky as you want it to be. So you can just blend it smoother if you want it to be a smooth, like a cream soup or a pureed soup. And if you want it to be chunky, you can leave it chunky. Deb, it's a good idea to try soup because it's really good. Peg, I'm finished except for the finished product here. It just finished cooking, so it's going to be 5 more minutes before I can blend it because it has to cool for about 5 minutes. You don't have to strain it if you puree it. No. Susan. Well, you were a great group, so I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Kathy. So I guess the bottom line is after this is finished, you take it out and then you go ahead. Why don't you just talk us through what you do for the very end so they can know what to do?
It's at 0 minutes now, and the hump is going to the keep warm. The recipe for making it in the Instant Pot says cook for 10 minutes and then keep warm for 5 minutes, which is the same as using the natural release. Then you release it the rest of the way and you hear a click as that little button, the silver button, goes down flush with the lid, and then it'll allow you to open the lid, and then I just stick this in, plug it in, and puree it until it's smooth. My mom's stew recipe, yeah. It's a good one. It's so tender. My dad is having some issues where he has to get his teeth pulled and get false teeth in, and he doesn't have a lot of teeth left in his mouth. And he loves to eat. He's 94, almost 95, and that's one of his pleasures in life is eating. So he actually could chew the beef from the stew. It was so tender. So I just use beef cubes, stewing beef cubes. No fancy cut. Bye-bye.